Hi, my name is Deb from DG Reads, and this is my furry sidekick Kylie, and we're here today to kick off a reading vlog, Reading Romance. I'm not particularly known for being a romance reader, but sometimes there are some that just call to me, and I do have a few on my shelf that I've been wanting to get to, and what better time to embrace the romance than February. So I'm going to be picking up a few different books and exploring some different genre mashups and subgenres maybe of romance in the space of this reading vlog. I do have a TBR for this one, so let me share that with you really briefly. Starting with the kind of most straightforward romance, I have All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata, and this one both intrigues me and worries me a little bit because it is a very chunky book for a contemporary type of romance, but I know this is an author who can write a romance that I enjoy. She does slow burn really well, and this is a gifted copy from Avon Books, so I've really been wanting to get to this one. The next one on my list is one I actually received in one of these little mini boxes from Once Upon a Book Club that I picked up in the Black Friday sales that I've been needing to get to. And with these, you get a book and a couple little gifts to go with it. So I will not be spoiling what the gifts are in the space of this vlog, but I just thought I'd mention the box as well. I do have a discount code. If you use DG Reads 10 on your first purchase from Once Upon a Book Club, you will get a discount on your first order. The book that came in that box is You Can Run by Becca, and this one says it is a Laurel Snow romantic thriller. So it has romance, it has some mystery or thriller elements from what I understand. This is an author who I think writes a lot of kind of romantic suspense series, and this is the first book in a new series, so I'll be checking this one out. Probably my most comfortable comfort zone when it comes to romance is when romance is part of a fantasy story. So the next one I have is The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Caruso. This is kind of, I'm interpreting it as kind of fantasy slash sci-fi potentially because of the characters moving between layers of reality. I'm not sure how much romance is in here, but the blurb does say that there is sapphic romance mixed in with the rest of everything going on in this book. And lastly, I'm not sure how well this genre mashup is going to work for me as a combination of romance and horror, and that is Sugarcane by Cassandra Celia. This is an edition I got in a Twisted Retreat box, and it's short. It's serial killers, but within a married couple, so a romance in that sense. So I will find out more when I actually start reading this one. So I feel like that gives me a really good mix of some different areas in romance to try. I'm not sure how much romance we're getting from each of these stories and how much I will enjoy them in the end, but I guess we will find out as I get going. So I'll be back once I start reading and give you some initial thoughts. So for my contemporary romance reading, I am now about halfway, give or take, in All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. And I'm not quite sure because I was listening to the audiobook on my way home from work and therefore not positive exactly where I got to. This is not a small, quick read as far as contemporary romances go. It's about 17 hours of audiobook, but I do know that I enjoyed this author in the past. I do know that she is known for slow burn, which is what I tend to prefer. So I went into this one with high hopes. This is a gifted copy that I received from Avon, and again, I requested it because of this being an author I know has the potential for being someone I really enjoy reading. So thankfully, so far, I have been enjoying this. I made it through the first half of this really quickly, so we're off to a pretty good start. We're following Aurora, who has been through a breakup with her musician boyfriend, and she's kind of left at loose ends. She's not sure what to do next. So she winds up renting out a garage apartment for a month to explore her old home, to see an old friend, to kind of get her feet under her. Unfortunately, it turns out the owner of the property wasn't the one to rent it to her. Instead, it was his teenage son, hoping to make some money to buy himself a guitar. So her tenancy there doesn't start off on the smoothest footing, but she winds up talking this landlord, Tobias, into letting her stay. And he puts a lot of restrictions on this. She needs needs to leave his son alone. She needs to be quiet and not get in the way and be unseen, unheard. But of course, things are going to change over the course of the book. So I am really enjoying this so far, and I really like the discussions on kind of Aurora's work on becoming self-sufficient and trying to learn new stuff and get a job even though she doesn't quite know what she's doing. There's a little bit of a messiness when it comes to the whole relationship. We know going into this that her landlord Tobias is going to be an interest for her, but we also have another candidate in the running for her attentions, and there's a little bit of a messy family dynamic there that I don't know how I'm going to feel about in the long run. But other than that, I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying Tobias's career in forestry and kind of learning a few things with that. He's able to kind of encourage her knowledge of hiking and fishing and some of those things as he starts to kind of open up to her. So I am looking forward to continuing on with this. It's not necessarily one that I feel like I have to binge all in one day, but I'm looking forward to picking it back up. I've finished up All Roads Lead here, and in general, I really enjoyed this one. It was maybe a little bit longer than I needed it to be at 17 hours of audio and a whole lot of pages. I think it's 600 some odd, or almost 600. So from that standpoint, for a contemporary, I feel like maybe it was a little on the long side, but I really liked the slow way this relationship built. From this grumpy sunshine dynamic to a friendship, somewhat reluctant friendship in some ways, and to becoming each other's person, to becoming each other's family, and that growth throughout the book I think felt really natural. I am not so sure about him calling her Buddy as one of his pet names for her, given that that's what I call my dog, but that's neither here nor there. I think that the growth and self-discovery that the main character Aurora had in here was also really good. I think the way that the non-traditional kind of family setups in here were done, and the friendships and the old relationships, all of those types of things, I think just were really adding to the main story and done in a really good way. So this is getting a good 4 stars for me, and again, this is an author that I think works well for me when it comes to contemporary because of the slow burn, because of the character development, and all of that. So with a contemporary done, I decided to go in a very different direction next with Sugarcane by Cassandra Celia, and this is my horror romance-ish book that I'm planning to pick up, and this is working for me this weekend in particular because for Becca from Becca in the Books 24-hour Patreon readathon this weekend, we were supposed to read for her mirror prompt, so I'm counting the reflective cover and the reflected edges on this one as working for that prompt, and I'm about 40 pages into this one. With this story, we are following a woman who learns that her beloved husband is a serial killer, and we're getting flashbacks to the past and in the present moment what's happening. The book opens with a very short passage from 2 months ago where she finds an article in the newspaper about a missing woman, or a woman who was killed. Now I'm already forgetting, but she basically expresses frustration that her husband has made a mess. Then in the present day, we immediately switch to her being tied up in their basement. So obviously something has gone on. We're finding out slowly that she's known about this happening for a while, not for their entire marriage. She thought they were happily married. She thought they had a routine. She thought everything was great. And then she starts to discover that her husband is not entirely what she thought he was. So I wanted to do a quick update at the beginning of this since it is so short. It's less than 150 pages. Not sure about it yet. I'm not sure where we're going with this yet, but it's an interesting romantic relationship dynamic on top of a serial killer horror to kind of explore. So I will let you know once I finish this one and let you know my thoughts. It is far too early in the morning, but I couldn't sleep, so figured I might as well give you an update on my romance reading with my really not romantic horror romance that I did finish up last night. This one left me with some mixed feelings. I think it did what it wanted to do very well. I think the way it did the storylines and the different time periods was well done. In the past point of view storylines, it bounces back and forth in time, so we kind of see the beginning of their relationship, the romance of that, the more recent times where she's just getting sick of his horrible behavior. Of course, we know in the present day, he's actually caught her finding him doing something, and that has put her in danger. And I think this is one to approach with a lot of caution. It's essentially, for a good portion of the book, on page a husband abusing a spouse, and it gets bloody, it gets gory, and it's not pleasant necessarily, but I think it's well done. It definitely had me hooked. I read the whole thing yesterday, and for a physical only read when I was sleepy, the fact that this kept me awake and kept me wanting to read more is all a good sign. So this one winds up being kind of in the range of a 3.5 to a 4 for me. It's not one I would call romance, but it's definitely relationship focused and marriage focused. So from that standpoint, it's an interesting one to check out. With that, I would also say that the book itself has a little bit of a mixed media element. I don't know how much is because of the special edition or not, but you do get a few news articles at the beginning, at the end, and this particular edition does have some interesting graphics going on as well at the start of each chapter. You kind of get the bloody handprint, and I enjoyed that formatting here as well. Moving on to my fantasy / sci-fi related romance, I have now made it to 51% into The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Crusoe. And the romance in here is very slight, I would say so far. I would not call this by any means a fantasy romance. There's definitely romance elements. I can see why the blurb included the fact that there is sapphic romance going on in here, but it's very much a subplot. In this book, we're following Kim, who is a hound. She's actually on leave because she's just had a baby. She's a brand new mom, and she's gone out for an evening to attend this party. She's not there in any sort of official capacity, but of course things go on, and she gets sucked into something. There's a clock at this particular party, and every time it chimes, the whole kind of world resets, and it sinks into kind of an alternate reality, or an alternate layer of reality. It's a little bit confusing, quite honestly, and that's partially probably just my distracted brain. It's also just something that's taking me a little bit of time to wrap my head around, but I am very intrigued by this concept. Kim has a particular ability to be able to kind of step into these kind of rifts in time. She has the ability to kind of save people from going in, and this is something that she as a hound is meant to do. Also at this party is Rika, and Rika is a cat, and think cats as cat burglars. She is someone who does heists and the like, and she and Kim have a past together, and there's been some romantic entanglement there. But with Kim as a hound and Rika as a cat, there have been problems between them. We're kind of finding out what some of those problems have been, why they are rivals currently, but there does appear to still be at the heart some feelings between the two. But we're not jumping into that in great depth. Even by halfway through the book, we're not getting a ton of that. We are seeing some good moments between them. We are seeing through Kim's head her feelings and the way she's thinking about Rika, and the way she kind of pulls Rika into what's going on, because initially Kim is the only one who's aware that this reality is shifting and things keep going wrong. Like, it's good that things get reset because people suddenly come back to life, but there's a big dangerous potential of what could happen, and things keep going very badly for everyone, and it all is centered around this clock. She winds up figuring out a way to pull Rika in with her, and the two are then working together to try to figure out what's going on, why this is happening, and what they can do to solve it and get out of kind of this loop that they seem to be in of sinking deeper into these echoes. So I would say so far, I'm very intrigued with this. I'm finding it interesting. It's taken a little bit of time for me to just kind of sink into. There's quite a few moving parts and characters, and I don't necessarily feel like I know all of the side characters all that well. I feel like Kem and Rika are pretty well fleshed out for me right now, but there's other characters, and when we run into them again, especially as reality resets, they're in slightly maybe different circumstances. It takes me a bit to connect who's who, and again, that could very much be a me thing over the book thing. Just I'm a little tired. I'm a little maybe not as focused as I should be with this book maybe, but I am very intrigued to continue on, so I will be back once I've finished it to let you know what my final thoughts wind up being. I have a couple of updates for you on my romance, quote-unquote romance reading. And first off, I finished The Last Hour Between Worlds, and overall I enjoyed this. I liked the action of it, the concept of it. There were things that I didn't love as much. The confusion for me has to do with maybe the world building, and I don't know if I missed something or it just wasn't fully explained well enough for me, because we have the concept of echoes, and echoes can be kind of characters, echoes can be where they are in the kind of layers between time, and I got a little confused by that a bit. I think I would have needed a little more explanation personally. The romance in here is definitely more present in the second half of the book. We've got some history explained between these characters, but again, I didn't feel like I maybe got as much as I would have wanted. We definitely got a sense of the feelings they had, the importance each of them had for the other one, and that is in there, and some of that does get resolved as well in here. It's not a romance heavy book by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a definite focus of the story, I would say, as it impacts the motivations of our main character and certainly of her partner Rika as well, although we're not so much in Rika's head. You can kind of see the way the actions are playing out with this in mind. So overall, I gave this one, I think, a 4, 3.5 maybe to a 4. It just didn't quite hook me in as well as I would have wanted it to. This is labeled as the first book in a series, but I think this actually wrapped up well enough and with a tied up enough ending that in my mind I kind of feel like this is something I will treat as a standalone. I'll see when more books come out what we'll say about them, and maybe I'll be intrigued to pick up the next one, but for now I think this is one that I'm just going to consider a complete story and go ahead on with my reading. So speaking of that, I did, in fact, continue on with my romance reading, and I picked up You Can Run. And this is by Rebecca Zanetti. This is another one that's the start of a series, this one being a romantic thriller series. We're following Laurel Snow. She's an FBI profiler. She has a photographic memory. She's got the ability to just memorize a ton of things in the space of a moment. She can read everyone in a room in a moment. She has a lot of special skills that aid her in her career. She gets a call from her mother that near her hometown a bunch of bodies have been found. They're thinking serial killer, and for some reason her uncle is someone they're questioning. And she calls in a favor with her boss and goes to take on this case. In the process, she goes to the doorstep of Huck, and he is a fish and wildlife ranger, but also a former soldier, and she gets him to help her to the site where all these bodies have been uncovered on a mountain, and he winds up getting kind of sucked in reluctantly to this investigation in some ways, and there's definitely an immediate attraction between the two. So you can tell what the romantic pairing is going to be in here. I'm liking Laurel quite a bit. I think she's quirky. She's not necessarily a character I feel like I've never read before. The book itself has some kind of Criminal Minds feelings to it, so I'm equating her to Dr. Spencer Reed. I think there's some social awkwardness, but also she is looking for things like an entanglement with Huck. She's recognizing that he's hot. She has good relationships relationships with her family and potentially with this man. There's a woman who they wind up questioning as a potential witness, who is a really interesting character along the way. The synopsis does mention her, so I don't feel like that's a spoiler, but this person is kind of playing with Laurel in some ways, and that makes for a really interesting situation. I wouldn't say this is the best written story I've read, the most engaging story I've read, but I'm having a good time with it. I wound up picking it up on audio and just sitting and crocheting with it last night, and I'm looking forward to going ahead and probably finishing it up the same way tonight. I have finished up my final romance read, and overall I found this entertaining. I didn't find it to be great. There's a lot of moving parts in here, and for a while I felt like there was too much going on, and I think it all did wrap into the story very well, but it felt a bit much for me along the way in a few places. We have our main character Laurel's kind of special abilities to have this concrete memory of everything. We have this love interest, Huck, and his kind of grumpy nature in general. We have Laurel's mother, who has a lot of trauma going on, but at the same time she's kind of this hippie tea maker, fun personality. We've got Laurel's family being involved in the mystery of these women. We've got much more family drama going on, and there are just a lot of things in here. I do know this is meant to be book one in a series. I think I said new series. Really, this one came out in 2022. I'm not sure if there are more books out in the series yet, but it's not a series I necessarily feel the need to pick up. Laurel's hair being a really unique shade of auburn, and Laurel's heterochromatic eyes being two different shades comes up a lot throughout the book. The author really wants to emphasize how unique this is, how special this is, and I think there's reasons behind that, but I think it was a little heavy-handed for me personally in terms of how often it comes up and how many times it says her dual-colored eyes looked at him, and even just things like that where other people aren't commenting on it, the narrator's making sure we remember that she has special eyes and special hair. So overall, I'm giving this one a 3. I thought the plot was well done. There were a lot of moving parts, but they did tie back together, and I thought the character and some of the character moments were really well done. I didn't love the writing per se in here, and it's not one that I'm feeling called to pick up anymore from this author currently, but I would try another book out in the future if I came across one. So with that, we have finished up our romance reads, and if you had told me at the start of this that the one that I would really enjoy probably the most was actually going to be the contemporary type romance, I would not have believed you. I do think Sugarcane was a really interesting and very disturbing take on a relationship story, and I think The Last Hour Between Worlds had some elements to it I liked. Definitely wouldn't recommend it as a romance per se, but it had some elements to it I liked, but in the end I was just okay with it more than loving it. So overall, a bit of a mixed bag, but I'm glad that I tried all of these out since they were all on my shelf. I still think my kind of comfort zone for romance is going to stay in the fantasy track. If you look back at my reading favorites of my faves, I definitely had more success there with my fantasy romance exploration. But I'm also the type of reader who doesn't want to ever give up on a genre necessarily, and will keep trying to explore more in the realm of romance. Let me know down in the comments, do you have any romances that you're especially looking forward to reading for February? Do you have any romances you would recommend to me, a reluctant romance reader, that you think I might actually really enjoy? Let me know all the things. I'd love to chat with you in the comments. And if you could hit that like button, I would truly appreciate it. And hit subscribe if you're interested in more of my reading vlogs, more of my genre explorations, and more of my bookish content in general. But for now, I'll leave you here and catch you real soon in a new video.